Senator Van Hollen from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to both of our witnesses. As the chairman and others have said, the Ukrainian people have inspired people throughout our country and throughout the world in their fight for freedom and for sovereignty. And the support from the United States and our allies to the people of Ukraine has been essential in that fight, both the military support and the economic sanctions. And I want to applaud the Biden administration for working with our allies to provide that essential military equipment and to impose those sanctions very rapidly. And we've seen projections of Russian GDP having declined as a result of that. We all recognize, and I know the Biden administration does as well, that the one area where Russia has continued to generate a lot of revenue to fund their war machine is in their sale of energy, gas, and especially oil. And so I also applaud the administration's effort with G7 to establish the price cap. I think we all know, a lot of us have been following this closely. I chair the FISG subcommittee. We had a hearing on June 14th with Deputy Secretary Diemo, where we covered some of these issues. And it's pretty clear that there's some skepticism among oil traders about whether this will work. That's why I'm really pleased to team up with Senator Toomey to introduce legislation which, as he described it, we see as a complement to the administration's effort, a backstop, because you can easily imagine Vladimir Putin saying that he's not going to comply with this price cap, and that will set off a negotiation with those around the world who may be willing to purchase oil for a little bit above the price cap, which is still in their interest compared to global prices. And so the idea behind this legislation is to provide a uniform backstop worldwide and say to any financial institution that's thinking about financing or participating in a transaction to purchase a Russian oil above the price cap set by the G7 will face penalties. And if you're right, and we hope you are, that you don't need anything like that, people comply voluntarily, great. But if they don't, you'd have a backstop. And again, if it works perfectly, you won't need it. So I guess my question is, what is your sense of the need for additional leverage? Wouldn't you support something that gives you a little bit extra leverage as you go around negotiating this price cap? Assistant Secretary Rosenberg.
Thank you, Senator, for the opportunity to address this point. We have the U.S. administration and our G7 partners have a good deal of leverage and authorities right now in order to pursue a policy that sets out, as you have recognized, a powerful set of incentives for purchasers of Russian oil to purchase that oil at cut rate prices at below the cap here. We also have authorities that we can bring to bear for the purposes of enforcement, which I believe you're specifically addressing, when there is an instance, for example, of a purchaser that has committed fraud, that has made material misrepresentations to service providers that are acting in good faith to follow this price cap policy. That's the focus that, to the extent that we need to use enforcement measures, that would be of primary concern for us. And at this time, we have sufficient authorities in order to pursue those avenues.
I guess, Madam Secretary, that as Senator Toomey pointed out, if you're Russia, you're going to be hell-bent on trying to develop different avenues to sell your oil at a price somewhat higher than whatever price the G7 sets. And so this mechanism signals to Russia and others around the world that if you're involved in some kind of scheme to evade these price caps, you will be hit, and it will be automatic. And I believe one of the benefit of putting this sort of threat of sanctions out in advance is everybody's on full alert that this is the law and this will apply. Clearly, if somebody is buying in good faith, there can be exceptions for those purposes. But I do think there's a great benefit to having a worldwide backup so that Russia does not try, as it's bound to do, to play countries against each other if those countries know they're all going to be subject to the same uniform sanction penalty. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.